Now, when the government decided to close our borders to New Zealand on Monday, we were largely kept in the dark. Despite what we were told, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern was shocked and disappointed and told Scott Morrison so too.
Oh, I certainly expressed disappointment that that decision had been made. I conveyed the confidence that we have in our systems, but also just acknowledged that if we are to enter into a trans-Tasman bubble, we will need to be able to give people confidence that we won't see closures at the borders that happen with very short notice over incidents that we believe can be well managed domestically.
It sounds like Scott Morrison through 2020, doesn't it? So why shut borders with just one infection in another country, not another state? I thought we should hear what the tourism industry thinks of this new federal strategy. Late this afternoon, I caught up with the CEO of the Tourism and Transport Forum, Margy Osmond. Well, Margy Osmond, Jacinda Ardern did not pull any punches in those statements yesterday. She was stunned, and I think so would you have been.
Well, look, I mean, this is, it was a disappointing start to the year anyway. I think this just is the cherry on the top of the cake for the tourism industry. Domestic borders have been difficult enough in terms of state borders, but now to be facing this kind of uncertainty with international borders as well is just another blow for the industry.
Well, not only a blow, but when you think about it, thousands of people, both in New Zealand and Australia, would have been put out of work for these 3 days because there were no flights coming from New Zealand. I don't get it. Is Scott Morrison getting some of the bug that WA and Queensland has got, and he decides the only way to deal with this is to shut borders?
Well, look, I certainly hope not, Chris. I really hope that this is one virus that isn't circulating at federal level. But I suppose you've got to ask the question. For us at this point in time, we've said, well, if you are going to treat the international border in the same cavalier way that the state borders are being treated, we are going to have some kind of certainty. And if you can't give us that certainty, it is yet another reason why they will have to extend a tailored package to support the tourism industry, because we are feeling the brunt of what are some very interesting decisions being made in the political environment.
You're doing it tough, and then you're being kicked just as, some of the green shoots come out, and you've got some movement between one country and the other. I just don't get it. And I noticed the Premier today, the New South Wales Premier, didn't want to lag on the feds, but she was kind of saying, oh, they mustn't have got enough information. Really? I bet that wasn't the case. I just get the feeling that the federal government may be eyeing off an election, and as a result, its elimination, we're not back to where we used to be, which was suppressing the virus.
Well, look, I would love to think you are wrong on that score, Chris, and I do share the frustration of the New South Wales Premier, who has done everything right, and up until, only days ago was the gold standard around the country. This is, from our perspective, really, really difficult and unfortunate. And the other thing that it does more than anything else, because, look, to be honest, at this stage we only had the one-way bubble, but it's what it does to confidence and what it does to people's willingness to book. And I'm telling you right now that there'll be huge reluctance to book any kind of holiday, here or even into New Zealand once we're allowed to go. Because why would you if you can't be certain what the situation's going to look like?
And that's precisely what Jacinda Ardern pointed to. They need confidence, because when you make a decision to fly from one country to another, there are hundreds of other decisions and commitments you have made to work in with the trip that you're making. And I don't get it. One case, one lousy case. Now, back to domestic borders, we've had nationally no locally transmitted infections for 10 days, in some states for a lot longer. But we've still got border protections against those evil infected people in Sydney.
Yes, we're clearly terrible creatures, those of us who reside in Sydney. I mean, look, I think, Chris, it's fascinating. I was having a catch-up last night with my opposite number in Scotland, of all places, and talking about how their industry's faring over there. They can't even do intrastate, they can't even travel around in their own country within the UK at this point in time, and they expect to be locked down until May now. But he was just frankly amazed at the reactions in this country to such tiny outbreaks. And you and I have discussed this before. The tourism industry is absolutely 100% behind the number one priority being health of Australians. That should be the government's job. But my goodness, we really do need some certainty, and this doesn't bode well for the next 6 months.
We've had a lot of discussion about the vaccine since the start of the week, because we're now about to roll the first one out and then the second one a little later, probably late March now, we're hearing. What about travel? Are we going to get to the situation where both at a domestic level and an international level I will need a passport, a separate medical passport showing that I've had the vaccine, or is that not required?
Look, I think, if only from an optics perspective, I think it is going to be required, Chris, and I wish there was some other way of expressing it, but I think that's what's going to happen. The aviation industry is very keen to get back in the air, and they're very keen to give everybody an opportunity to travel again, but they'll do what it takes and what government insists is necessary in this environment, because we just need to open the industry again and start restoring confidence. And to be honest with you, in terms of jobs, the industry has lost over 500,000 full-time positions in the last 12 months out of about 1.1 million.
Gee.
If we don't get an extension of JobKeeper beyond March, between April and September, we're going to lose another 318,000 jobs. And the industry will be less than a third of the size it was in 2019. That's not a recoverable space.
Yeah, if it's not JobKeeper, and they're telling us it won't be JobKeeper, and after today's inflation figures, I doubt whether JobKeeper will be extended, but there's got to be something different. There's got to be an offer to hopefully keep the tourism industry from falling off that cliff. You're exactly right. Just a sidebar issue to the planes that are sitting on tarmacs. I drove past the Sydney airport over the weekend, and I looked at all of those Qantas planes lined up in fallow areas of the tarmac, and there were just piles of them, and I thought to myself, how do we maintain them? Do they need to be started on a regular basis? Do the air conditioning systems need to be frequently turned on for them to be able to get into the air the moment someone says we're flying again?
Oh, absolutely. And that is uppermost in the mind of the airports and the airlines. The vast bulk of everybody's fleets are in fact mothballed in desert conditions around the world. So there'll be some in Central Australia. The American deserts are apparently the lowest moisture zone and the best place to store aeroplanes. But the safety of the planes that are currently on tarmacs here in Australia is paramount, and there's an awful lot of checking goes on. And of course, even more now in terms of keeping those air conditioning systems and everything else just spotless.
Yeah, interesting. That's a job in itself, but at least someone's got some work in the aviation industry while they are parked. Yes. Thank you so much for your time. Fingers crossed we don't close another border because of one infection. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, and for your support.